The recording and it's going. Okay, we're not getting the Facebook Live feature to work today, unfortunately. So we'll record it and post it. And I probably should say that on the page. Let me stop this and say that. Okay, all right. Well, our Friday feature today is going to be recorded and posted later. But I am so excited to have my friend Larry Cooper on today with me. Larry has experienced 3 near-death experiences, and so that's our focus today. And Larry, I would welcome you to the show.
Thank you. Beautiful day outside, and it's a great day to be on a show like this and talk to some like-minded people.
Yeah, it is. It is beautiful out. Could you tell us just a little bit, whatever you want to share about yourself, your background, and whatever you feel a need to do?
I moved to Colorado when I was about 7 years old and grew up in a small town between Boulder and Denver, and really didn't have anything unusual go on in my life other than I had a lot of freedom. My parents both worked, and so I had a chance to do whatever I wanted to. It was kind of funny. I had 3 older brothers, and the 2 older ones would look at me every day and say, if you're not back here by 5 o'clock, we're going to kill you, kind of thing. And that's when my parents were getting home. So I didn't have a lot of supervision growing up, and I survived somehow and had a great time, a lot of great friends, and pretty wild, but nonetheless, when I was in junior high school in this town, I met this girl who was coming over to our school. I was in public school and she was in a Catholic school, and we immediately became pretty close friends, and a couple of months later started dating, and we ended up getting married when we were 18 years old, which is crazy as heck, right?
Right.
And everybody told us we were absolutely nuts and it wouldn't last, especially our parents. And of course, that made sure then that we would be together forever just to show them. But there you go. We also had this feeling that we were just doing it again, or a continuation of a relationship we'd previously had.
Okay.
So we have stayed in this area, and we had 3 kids. I have 9 grandkids, and we have a center called Journeys for Conscious Living. We've had it for 10 years, and we do all kinds of events, spiritual and otherwise, and drum circles, sound concerts, meditations. We had Evolve Expo for a number of years, and you can look to see that that'll be coming back in the near future also. But I've lived a great life, and I've had some wild, crazy experiences, and grown to be a different person because of those. But nonetheless, it's really exciting to be here with you, and it's great to see you doing a show like this.
Yeah, I'm excited. When I first thought of you having you as a guest, I didn't even realize. I knew you had a near-death experience, and it was pretty profound. And I knew you were a very amazing, you had amazing healing abilities and seeing abilities, more so than, but maybe more so than what maybe you would get normally. So tell me, I was surprised when we talked briefly yesterday that your first experience was when you were pretty young.
Yeah, and I think I'll start out by just telling you also that when you invited me to do this, I was a little hesitant because I've never done this in public before. I've never really talked about this, and it took me a long time to even get to a point where I wanted to talk about it at all. So my first experience, I was 22, had a couple of kids by then, and I had a problem with one of my ears, and my parents had been bugging me for years to have major surgery, and I really didn't want to do it, and I finally gave in and said, all right, I'll go ahead and try this. And it turned out to be really challenging surgery. I was in surgery for a very long time and didn't have any problems during that. But on the fourth surgery, I was on a local. I wasn't completely under. I was in an operating room. Ear doctor was working on my ear, and everything seemed to be going just fine, like the previous three, obviously. And then all of a sudden, something happened, and I completely blacked out. And the next thing I knew, I was watching what was going on in the room from the ceiling. Mm-hmm. And I'd never experienced or heard of anything like that. And I was like, what the heck is going on? And so as I'm watching from the ceiling, the doctor completely froze. He just was freaking out, and he left the room. And I was like, wow, what's going on down there, you know? And I'm like, okay, that's pretty weird. And then all of a sudden there's a rush of all these nurses coming in, and one nurse really took over. She was kind of a big girl, probably 5'10", 5'11", maybe 200, 220 pounds. And she immediately was telling people what to do. And then she started pounding on my chest. I don't mean pressing on my chest. I mean pounding on my chest.
Oh my word.
And I'm up there on the ceiling going, ow, that really hurts. Stop that. Don't do that. And she didn't stop, of course, couldn't hear me. And she kept doing it. And it was a couple of minutes, I think, that she was doing it. There's all kinds of other activities going on around me. And then all of a sudden, there was this pain that I could feel from the ceiling, and zoom, I was right back in my body.
Okay.
So I obviously didn't know what had happened at that point. And when I got back in my body, there was no pain. I had no idea where I was or what was going on. And again, I was on outpatient surgery.
Oh, wow.
Uh-huh. And so, you know, they worked with me a little while, and, you know, I heard later on, my wife said, doctor came out and said they had a few problems, and there's a slight emergency going on in the operating room. The cauterizing knife that he uses to cut, it actually seals off the blood vessels, had somehow shocked me, and my heart stopped. And so that's what they were doing. They were working on my heart, trying to get it to function again. And they sent me home that day. It was weird. I have to tell you, that memory of being on the ceiling and looking down just puzzled me. It scared me. It's not anything usual, nothing I believed in, nothing I'd ever heard about before.
Yeah,
and I just kind of hid it. I didn't say anything about it.
Did you even tell Trina, your wife?
No.
Okay, so you didn't share it with anyone?
No, I didn't share it with anyone for about almost a year, maybe. I mean, time went by so fast after that. You know, I started noticing little changes in me, and it was definitely a different time. But
yes. So this was about, what, I want to say 40 years ago? What, about?
Yep.
Okay.
That's a long time ago, huh?
It is. Yeah, it is. So
Yeah.
let's see. Yeah, so it was a ways ago. 1980? Is that about?
That's about right.
Okay.
Yep. Exactly. 79, 80 time frame. So
yeah.
About 2 weeks later, I had to go back in and finish the surgery, believe it or not. And that time they put me under, and there were 3 doctors in the room and all kinds of crazy stuff. And I think the doctor was worried about getting sued at that point in time. And
right.
I didn't really have an interest in a lawsuit. I just wanted my darn ear to heal and be done with all this. So pretty strange experience, to say the least.
So after that initial near-death experience, and you didn't realize it was that, and I understand that because I didn't realize mine was for years and years and years either. So, how did you notice anything like any special qualities or abilities or things that were a little bit different for you, telepathy or anything unusual, put it that way?
You know, I think that I changed enough that I didn't want to be around a lot of negative people.
Mm-hmm.
And I was also very involved in my business at that time. I had started the business when I was 18. And, you know, I guess I had no fear of doing anything or accomplishing anything. And that might have come from that also.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I didn't notice my sense of abilities
Yeah.
until later on because they just seemed like normal functions to me. Maybe I didn't have any idea that other people couldn't see what I was seeing.
So tell me, so did you start noticing things before your next one, or when was your next?
Yeah, it was quite a ways later. That was, 20 years later.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. We've been working in a spiritual community for a lot of years and been involved in a lot of meditation and a lot of circles with great people. And I had an experience. I meet people in the strangest places. I meet people on airplanes or sitting at a bar and they come up and start talking to me like they're supposed to talk to me or whatever. But Trina met this person and she invited us to come to a group gathering at her house. And I'm like, what is this, another cult that somebody's inviting us to? What do you mean you're going to go to this? Well, she definitely wanted to go. And so she went the first time without me and came back just raving about how wonderful it was. And I went the second time, and the person that was leading it was like, what in the world is going on with you? She said, there's light blasting out of you everywhere. She had the ability to see, and she said, something strange about you. And anyway, I kind of sat back and I was observing. There were about 17 or 18 people there, and there was a woman there who had about 18 tumors, and she had had cancer many times, and they were going to do a healing on her. Well,
Okay.
Way out of my realm at that point in time, and so I just observed to see what they were going to do. I had been in some healing circles before, but not someone with tumors and cancer. Mm-hmm. Anyway, they start working on her, and I'm sitting in a chair, and there's people around a circle, and this woman that's in front of me starts grabbing something and throwing it behind her right at me. And I'm like, I could see this black goop coming at me, and I'm like, what the heck are you doing? And I'm like, stop that. What are you doing? You're throwing all this black goop on me. And I jumped up on the chair, started wiping it off my pants.
Right.
And my wife's looking at me now going, you see something? I don't see anything. So that kind of opened my eyes to my ability to see and how much I was seeing. And started using that to heal and to help people. And it was an interesting opportunity to help other people, but I had no idea that other people couldn't see what I was seeing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Very strange.
Yeah, that is. It is.
Huh.
Well, okay, so tell me about your next one and what...
Sure. We were very involved with quite a few groups about that time. And I was also really involved in the industry that I worked in, and had been president and chairman of an international standards group. And then I started a standards writing organization, which was American National Standards, writing for that group. And so I traveled quite a bit to meetings and presentations and a lot of committee meetings also. And so I was going to present to a board of directors in Virginia Beach, Virginia. and flew in and had the opportunity to have dinner with a guy who was the head of indoor air quality for the EPA. And we'd become friendly over the years, and I had been involved in some studies with him and a variety of things. And we're sitting at dinner in a really nice restaurant, and his wife joined us. And we're talking, and all of a sudden, I started getting really hot. I mean, not a little hot, really hot. After a couple of minutes, coming out of the back of my head, water was just pouring out of me. I mean, literally pouring out of my head.
You mean like sweat? You mean like...
No, more like drips of water coming out
Ew.
of me. Yeah, it was like, what the heck is going on with me? I'd never experienced anything like that before. And so dinner came, and obviously I couldn't eat dinner. And I finally said to them, I'm sorry, I'm not feeling real well. I'm going to have to excuse myself, and went back to my room. I was in a hotel and got up to their room, and I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what. And so I tried to go to sleep, couldn't go to sleep. And about 9 o'clock or so, 9:30 at night, I was really hot and the water was still pouring out of me. And so I called the front desk, and they helped me get a cab, and I went to the hospital. I didn't want to go in an ambulance, obviously. And I got to the hospital, and there were a lot of people there. And they made me wait in the waiting room 2 hours to see someone. So I finally got in to see someone, and it was after 11, maybe 11:30, and doctor examined me and said, well, you're running a high fever, 103.5 to 104, somewhere in that ballpark. Said, most likely you just have the flu. Just go back to your room, take some aspirin. Like, oh, wow, I waited 2 hours for that. That's awesome. So I go back to my room, take some aspirin. Doesn't do a thing for me at all. About 12:30 or 1 in the morning, this voice was talking to me saying, you just need to go home now, as fast as you can get there. I'm like, I'm listening carefully because, man, I am really scared about what's going on.
Right.
So called United Airlines, and they put me on the first flight the next morning. It was like 6:45 or 7 in the morning or something like that. Had to go through Dulles to Denver. And the hotel people were amazing. They sent a security guard up who helped me pack and helped me to the cab. It was crazy.
Wow.
I was having a hard time walking at that time.
Yeah.
I get to the airport. I have no memory of getting to the airport or how I got to the counter or to the airplane. Flew from Virginia Beach to Dulles. On Dulles, I got an upgrade into the first class area, and sat down and I fell asleep, thank goodness. Well, I woke up when the plane landed. It hit hard, and I was startled when I woke up, and I looked around, and there was nobody sitting in first class with me. And when I went to sleep, it was full. The whole cabin was full. And I was wrapped up in blankets like a mummy. I mean, so tight I couldn't move my arms. And so I'm trying to get someone's attention to help me, and nobody's coming in that cabin at all. They opened the back door and were letting people out the other way. And so I struggled for a while, and I finally got my arms out, and I got out of there. And I walked up front, and everybody was just looking at me, and I just walked off the plane. And I don't remember a lot of how I got home. I think Trina picked me up and got home, went to bed, and took more aspirin and all that stuff and Tylenol or whatever it was. And fever wasn't moving, called the doctor, and went in first thing in the morning the next morning. And this doctor looked at me and said, that's so weird. What is going on with you? So let's go over to the hospital and start running tests. And he immediately admitted me, but they had no idea what was wrong with me. The fever had no other symptoms whatsoever other than fever. No cuts, no bruises, no surgeries, nothing else. And so the fever kept going up. It was about 104, a little over 104. I was in that hospital for a couple of weeks running this fever, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. And finally, one day they're doing an ultrasound and they see an abscess growing on my kidney, and it's filling up with fluids very quickly. And so they decided they needed to do surgery on me. And what they were going to do is take one of those long needles and insert it in my back and try to pierce the sac to drain it. And I'm like, that doesn't sound too good to me. What the heck are they thinking about? So again, this voice starts talking to me saying, you don't want to do that or you're going to die. And if you are going to do it, the only way you're going to stay in is if you tell them that your wife is going to be in there with you, holding your feet, holding you in, grounding you so you don't leave. I'm like, what? Okay, I'll tell them that. So I tell them that, and they're all looking at each other like, that's pretty crazy stuff, dude. And they allowed it to happen. So she suited up and came in and holding my feet. And they went in with this needle, and they pierced the sac, and it ruptured, exploded. And these fluids went throughout my whole body. And so the fluids were pretty noxious, and my fever spiked immediately to 106.
Okay.
And, later that day went to 106.4. Anyway, they diagnosed it as a staph infection, and they have no idea how I would have gotten staph. I had no exposures whatsoever. So nonetheless, I was in intensive care for quite a few days, going downhill. There are antibiotics, there's 14 of them at that time, that potentially could kill this virus. And so they took blood cultures, and as it turned out, 1 out of the 14 actually worked on me. But let me tell you the rest of the story then. I think it was 4 or 5 days in, I was not doing very well, and in the ICU unit, you're kind of lonely to say the least, but at night, on that particular night, I left my body, and I immediately saw this bright, brilliant light. Looked like a tunnel, and it was just pulling me into it. And so looked beautiful to me, and I walked right through it and into it, and traveled somewhere. And when I got to the other side, it was, I would say, the most beautiful experience I've ever had. It was absolutely gorgeous. Sky was just crisp blue, flowers all over, the trees were amazing, the birds and the wildlife were incredible. And I could see beings there also, a lot of angels and other masters. And very quickly, I saw this being coming towards me. He was dressed all in white, and he had very long white hair. And he had a big smile on his face and welcomed me. And, you know, I felt just complete love from this being. And he said, come on, let's go walk around for a little while. And he took me up this road. It's a path, and it was just beyond words for the level of beauty that it was. And it was really something that I'll never forget, this vivid memory of. And we got to a point of walking and talking. And he said to me, you know, you're not supposed to be here yet. And I'm like, well, I'm not even sure where I am, but I believe you. So what am I supposed to do? And he said, well, you're going to go back. And he touched my shoulder right back into my body immediately.
Okay. Oh, wow. So you didn't see anything. You were just back in.
Just back in immediately. Yep.
Yeah.
Very strange and really cool.
Did you identify the person or that entity?
I'll tell you that after the next one.
Okay.
Because then what happened was I was not very lucid that night or day. I was really out of it. during that day, the doctors had actually, let's see, yeah, it was that day, told Trina that I wasn't going to make it and to prepare. And so that night, I had the exact same experience. The light was very, very bright. I left my body and traveled through this tunnel again. And the same being was there and welcomed me into the area again. And this time I could see more. The archangels were all around, and I actually had a chance to be with them a little bit. The wildlife was amazing, and I didn't see other human beings, although I could see souls.
So what did the archangels look like? How did you know they were archangels versus?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. And I wish I had a real way to identify that for you, but I'll try. The angels were light beings and just amazing energy. The archangels had this huge energy all around them and this light propelling from them all around. Mm-hmm. And the warmth coming from them was just overwhelming. It was really beautiful. So I traveled with this being and later identified him to be Melchizedek.
Oh.
I didn't know who Melchizedek was before then. I learned a lot about him afterwards. And so I was there for some time again. And he looked at me and he said, we've got to talk a little bit. And I said, great, let's talk. And he said to me, you went down to accomplish something. You had an agreement to go down and do one thing. And I have to tell you, you haven't done it yet, but you don't need to go back. But if you want to go back to do it, that's what you should do. And I'm looking at him like, oh my, thanks. It's really great here. I don't want to go back, but wow, that's something else. And
well, and it's such an interesting feeling because, if you have soul agreements and things, but then he said, I know that we all have intentions when we go and we choose this lifetime and yet he just let it be your free will. He's like, you're not done, but it's completely, that was great. That was great.
Yeah, it was pretty shocking actually. But I knew that I had to go back and finish. And he said, all right, well, let's go. And he said that different than the night before. He said, let's go. And so again, he put his hand on, he didn't put it on my shoulder, he put it on my chest. And immediately back in my room, in my bed. And there he was with me. He was at the foot of my bed.
Right. He said, let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he went with you. Strange. Definitely. Interesting.
It was really something else. So we were back in the room and I was quite startled then. And I think I woke up and I don't think the nurses thought I would be waking up at all again. And so they were around me, and the next day, my fever started going down. Mm-hmm. And I think over the next 2 days, went down to 104, and then down below 103, and down to 102, and reached a point where it was 99 to 100. I had a PICC line in my arm going to my heart. They were injecting me 3 times a day with this antibiotic. And started getting better. Kind of knew where I was. It was a great day to get out of ICU. And then I remember just, in and out with my kids there and hanging with them and doing those kind of things, watching movies and various things. But then after some period of time, whether it was a week or 10 days or whatever it was, doctor came in and I looked at him and I said, I'm not going to die here. He said, okay. And I said, what do I have to do to go home? And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm expecting you'll be here another 6 weeks. And I said, that would kill me. I am not going to stay here. And so I said, look, I'm really goal driven. You give me a set of goals I have to reach. I'm going to work on them and I'm going to get out of here.
Yeah.
And this was a doctor who was very young and really, really smart. And he only treated patients who had these critical or terrible type of illnesses. And he said, all right, I'll bring you a list tomorrow.
Yeah.
So he brought me this list the next day, about 20 things. Trina was there. And I said, thanks. And so we started going through the list. And she's kind of like, well, you ready to start? And I'm like, darn right I am. Let's go. So I had to do things like get out of bed. I hadn't walked, I guess that must have been 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
I had to walk around the hospital 5 times. Had to do all this breathing things that I wasn't able to do. I was just performing things that were well beyond my capabilities at that time. So amazing what a human being can do when they're challenged. And
It's
so
true. Yeah.
that list of 20 things was done in 24 hours. Absolutely crazy, right? And so
Right.
doctor came back in and the next day, and I sitting up in the chair with a smile on my face, and he's looking at me like, okay, what's going on? And I said, well, I did them all. And he went out and got the head nurse, came back in, and she said, yeah, I watched him. He did them all. And he looks at me and he's shaking his head and he's like, all right, you can go home tomorrow. I'm like, yeah. So it was probably the worst thing that I ever did for poor Trina because she had to take care of me. When I got home, my adrenaline and all that energy had left. I couldn't even walk to the house. I mean, she's literally carrying my butt up the stairs. I kept them there. And then over the next couple of weeks, she really helped me and pushed me to get things done and to make things happen. And so absolutely very cool. Very strange experience. But, between those experiences, all these things started changing.
Yeah. So I know this is kind of when the juicy stuff starts, doesn't it? I mean, it feels like you really amplified your seeing abilities, your healing abilities, although you'd already had those to some extent.
Well, I had some, but, I have to admit they were limited, and I had never dreamed about anybody being able to see or know or feel, and this was really quite an unusual thing that happened, obviously. Having 3 near-death experiences, everything inside this crazy brain of mine already changed. And all of a sudden I started seeing things. So, it took me a little while to get up and go do things. Just to walk around the block took me a week, I think. Mm-hmm. And then we started going places. And the first thing that happened that I would say pretty well freaked me out was that we went to a store, and as I'm walking through the parking lot, there's all these beings out there talking to me, and Trina can't see them.
Right.
And I'm like, seriously. And these are all people who had passed that were still down here on Earth that wanted to get a message to their loved ones. And for whatever reason, they knew that I could see them. And they were all talking to me. And I was like, boy, this is really overwhelming. And so I did work with some. And in a few situations, I actually helped some friends that lost some loved ones. But before I get into that, I can tell you also that I started doing more and more healing work. And at Journeys for Conscious Living, we were doing a lot of healing circles, and we were doing a lot of heal the healer type of circles. And I was seeing people that had some type of things happening to them and working on healing. But yeah, nonetheless, it was a very interesting time. But let me go back to what I was talking about with seeing people.
Okay.
There was a time when this man started talking to me and following me around, and he just wouldn't leave me alone. I didn't know him, excuse me, didn't recognize him, and he just kept talking to me. So I finally stopped and started listening to what he had to say. And I kind of recognized a few things he was saying, and I was trying to get what his name was.
Mm-hmm.
What I got was like an M. His name was like Michael or something like that. And it came to me that a good friend of ours who was very active in our center had lost her husband a few weeks earlier. He had overdosed. And so I'm looking at him and trying to communicate with him. I could hear him, but he wasn't hearing me. It was very strange. And so I picked up the phone and I called this lady and I said, what was your husband's name? I told her that, is it start with an M? And is it this? And she said, yes. And I said, well, does he look like this? And I described him, color of hair, build, and all those kind of things. She said, yeah, that's him. And I'm like, wow. I said, well, he's been following me around and really wants to talk to you. And she's like, what are you talking about? Probably the first time she'd experienced this also. And so she agreed to meet me at our center. And Trina came with me. And there might have been one other person there. I think there was, Lonnie. And so we got together. And he immediately came into the room and started talking to me. And he was talking so fast, I couldn't translate what he was saying to me.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, man, you're going to have to settle down. And he obviously wasn't going to. And so somehow or another, this voice was talking to me saying, just let him come through you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, I'll try that. I've never done that before. And so I literally let his soul come through me, through my vessel. And he was able to talk through my vessel to her directly. And I wasn't in the middle. And I was there just holding space. And so he was telling her what happened and that he didn't mean to take an overdose of medication. He was in a lot of pain. He was a bodybuilder and a whole variety of things. And nonetheless, they got to a point, it was probably 25 minutes in or so, and I was in a lot of pain. It was very painful to have him come through my body. And so I started telling him he had to leave my body. And he didn't want to. He wanted to keep talking to her.
Right.
And so it was a struggle going on for the next couple of minutes. And finally, somehow or another, I removed him from my body.
Yeah.
And nonetheless, she was very happy that she got a chance to be with him. And I was happy to be able to do that. But I learned something really critically about doing this kind of work. I had to make an agreement with any soul that was going to come and work with me about how long they were going to be there, you know, what the rules are, what they can and can't do. And I also set an alarm clock.
Yeah.
And our agreement was after 20 minutes, they would immediately leave my vessel and go on.
Yep.
And so I'll tell you about the next experience then that I had. And a very close friend who worked with us all the time lost her son in an accident
Mhm.
He worked for a logging company, and he had an accident with a large saw.
Yeah.
I think you're aware of that also. Anyway, we went to his funeral, and he started talking to me there. And then I did know him, recognize him. And the next week, he started talking to me often, showing up. And so he was talking slow enough and was calm enough that I could actually have a conversation with him.
Hmm.
He just wanted to talk to his mom and his sister.
Right.
So I set up a time with his mom and sister, and they came over to the center, and a couple of people, including Trina, joined us. And this time I had an agreement with him, and he came through my vessel, and the pain was not anything near like it was the first time. He was very calm, and it was an agreement of what was going to happen. And we set the alarm for 20 minutes.
Hmm.
And I didn't really hear the conversation. I was holding a space for him to be there,
Okay.
grounding, and
Were you
yeah,
still in the area? You were still in the room, kind of, but
I was there obviously, and I was right there at my vessel. He was coming through, and I was holding the vessel and his energy in place,
okay.
calming it as much as I could, white light all around it.
Hmm.
And so they had quite a conversation, my wife said, and after about, it was 20 minutes, the alarm went off, and he was
Yeah,
gone.
it just went out like that. Okay.
Yeah, so I did this work over the years, and got a lot better at it. But really what I got a lot better at was doing my own travel and meditations and going to places that were amazing, sometimes very hard to get back into my body.
Hmm.
But I learned a lot, and I had a chance to sit in front of some ancient councils, and um, I had a guide come to me from one of the ancient councils. Um, he was sitting next to me, and I'm looking at him going, boy, you look familiar, but it was Yeshua, and I really didn't know who he was, but
Hmm.
nonetheless, I was told that if I was doing healing work, he would be there with me. And
Nice.
so the healing work I was doing, it got very interesting because as I would start working with somebody, I could actually see their energy centers.
Hmm.
I could see all their chakras. They would light up or not light up. And I could tell where the blocks were and what they were holding in. And if there wasn't a clear connection, it caused disease or illness. And so I would work with those connections. Now,
So,
yeah, go ahead.
so Larry, did you see them as, what did they look like? Like, I mean, and are you still seeing them, or have you, I mean, we did chakra exercises, and they had these drawings from C.W. Ledbetter, for us to color in and look at, and I don't think I ever really got those images, but I did sense the feeling of them, and I felt them moving, and I could feel them change directions depending on what was going on in me. If I was speaking, I could sense them going one direction. If I was listening, they would go the other way. It was really cool. It wasn't like left is wrong and right is right. I mean, it was completely different than Hands of Light. What did you, like the Miss Brennan, I think her name is, what did you see, or could you describe some of that?
Yeah, I have all of those pictures, and I actually bought some beautiful glass work with all their sizes and colors, and I didn't see any of that, by the way.
Yeah, yeah,
What I saw was light
yeah,
glowing or turned off,
yeah.
except
Oh,
for one chakra, which was the heart chakra. And the heart chakra always came to me almost in an emerald green color,
okay.
really bright, brilliant, beautiful color. But let's take, for instance, the solar plexus. if there's a block there or you're holding in some huge emotion that you haven't dealt with or you're unable to pass, there was no connection in the chakras because that block was there.
Because it's almost like it all just needs to flow. And if there is any, the energy is held there, then does it block the others completely too? It must. I mean.
Well, the others were all bright.
Okay.
But with that block, there's no flow of energy.
Okay, gotcha.
So the flow of energy is the chi for the body, right?
Right.
And so without that, something's going to happen and you're not going to handle it well until you clear that.
Right.
So the first thing that I would do when I worked with somebody is, again, go back to agreements.
Yes.
I worked with a lot of people, and I have to tell you, I heard the craziest things ever, but the first question I would ask is, do you want to be healed? Do you want to release this? Because if they didn't really have a yes, there was no way I could help them.
Well, I know I know it's interesting, and I used to do healing, and I always thought that it was weird because I didn't really ask them, but I know I would now if they wanted to be healed. But like this, when I was just starting out and I was kind of working with this guy, I couldn't sense any of his energy. I couldn't sense anything, and I just thought that I was bad at it, I was just like, oh, well, I don't understand why I can't feel this guy. And I must be doing it wrong. I was completely like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, but I could feel it on other people. And I don't know why, can't get this guy going. Well, it never dawned on me till later when I was working with, say, Dane here, and we were talking about some energy stuff. And I'm like, he said, if you can't feel them, it's not you, it's them. And I'm like, oh, of course, because it's like they're the ones that have to heal themselves anyway. They have to be open to healing. They have to be open to receive, and they have to be open-minded enough to not believe once they're healed that not like, remember we talked about, like Jesus would say in the Bible, if you go tell no one of this healing, because it was almost like if you do, you'll start doubting it and you'll recreate it.
Agreement number 2, which is that this isn't to go out and share to the world. It's yours.
Yeah.
And you're healing yourself. I'm not going to heal you. And the last thing you want to do is go tell your naysayer friends that you did this miraculous healing. They're going to tell you you're crazy and you're never going to be healed. And guess what? Everything you had already done is gone.
It's gone. I know. And because our mind is so powerful in the connection and what we believe. And it's not only, and you believe doctors and of course science, and, there's like this whole balance of how does it all work and together, but the mind has such an effect on the energy that, yeah, you have to be able to, because there's reasons that you're not ready to heal. There's people that they're really not ready, or they don't want to for another reason or something that's unconscious, or yeah.
And maybe they're happy being miserable. I don't know. It's not my place to judge.
Right. I have no idea either. But
yeah, that's exactly it. Let's also talk about what happened up at the medicine wheel, if I can.
Oh, I would love to.
Yeah.
That was cool.
We were invited to be at a medicine wheel that is just an amazing, ancient, sacred space, rose quartz. I don't know how old it is, but obviously it's been there a very long time. And we brought drums and flutes and all kinds of wonderful things. And we sat in circle in all the directions, and very powerful group. And this just confirms more about my ability to see. Right next to the circle, there's 3 rocks jagging out. And I was always curious about them, but we started drumming and chanting was going on that was intense. All of a sudden, those 3 stones came alive, and there were 3 natives, and it was so amazing to see them. And they felt, maybe it's the other way around, I felt so blessed to be in their presence because they were so thrilled to have that circle there, blessing that space again. and reactivating it. It was
It,
really,
it, and I have to share, this was at my medicine wheel, or on our land, not my medicine wheel, but my husband and I, it's our land, and it's a medicine wheel that we have. We know it's a Ute Native American medicine wheel from, well, at least 100, 150 years ago, from the research we've done. But I was there, and I remember, okay, the other things that we should point out is that James was channeling, and John and I had been going to him, and he had talked about, we were purchasing the land, and he talked about these three keepers of the land, and they were Native Americans. He talked about them as three keepers, and we were always like, that's really interesting, these three keepers, and he would give us messages or whatever. And then when we were there, he did some channeling of some kind and probably called them in, or he recognized their presence. Then you came over and said something to me. I was on the I was at the south point, south node. You came over and said, do you see those three natives over there? And I said, I see pillars of light over there. Yes, because I can see auras, but I don't know that there's Indians in full headdress, and that you described that to me. And I was like, oh, it was already electric. We already had lightning and thunder and all sorts of wonderful rain and all the elements. And then we had these, it was an amazing night. Mm-hmm. But I was so thankful for you, and so gratitude, so much gratitude that you had that ability and could share that with me, because I had no idea. When I first saw that, I was just like, oh, it might be entities, it might just be my own imagination. And so, it just helps other people when you can confirm that.
It's fun, actually, but it's also different.
It is. Yeah. I've had some, I used to have classes up here. I've had one student that was a natural seer, and we went out to the medicine wheel. He told me all sorts of things, what he saw, and the Native Americans were actually coming up when we went outside around the wheel. They were just all coming out of the trees, kind of watching what we were doing. And he saw tree people, man. He saw some cool things. So, ants, I called them. Yeah, I was like, wow, okay. So tell us now, are you doing much with the healing and messages and that kind of stuff for people at this time, or what do you? It seems like you learned how to turn it down and kind of.
I've learned how to turn it off and turn it on. Took me years to do that. And I still do healing work, not as often as I would like. In the next couple of years, I certainly will be doing more and more of it. My businesses have thrived over the last couple of years, 20 years really, since my near-death experiences. One of the things I really had to learn was to take spirits and souls, and I guess they're people, out of my life that were really negative. And I only interact with and hang with people that are really positive and have beautiful energy and believe that love's all around them, and all those other people should go do their own thing because I don't want to be with them. And so it's really changed who I am and what I do. And so I've been working hard for the last 20 years to live that life, not just have the ability, but to be in a place every day where you can just say, wow, love is amazing. And this light that we have is so incredible. And how do we bring all these light workers together to share and be together, because we can blow away the rest of the world. So that's kind of what I've been practicing more so than anything else. We put on a lot of events, spiritual events and other things, and we'll continue to do that. And it's been kind of fun because I've been reaching out into different worlds and bringing my energy with me into those. I don't change for anybody. And so I'm working with a political party right now doing all their meeting planning. And they're all like, you're like the most calm, wonderful person I've ever met. What's that all about? And I'm like, you should hang out with me more often. Maybe it'll rub off a little bit. So it's been kind of fun, and I've just been doing some experiments and enjoying it a lot, obviously. And there's really some amazing people all over the world. And I really do enjoy the healing. I really do enjoy interacting with a lot of people and trying to make a difference and looking at new perspectives. And boy, I've had some great opportunities to work with people that are so connected and have so much light and energy, and just a real blessing to have that chance to work with them like it is to work with you, Eileen. So thanks for this opportunity.
Sure. Yeah. So Larry, so what can you tell people who have lost someone close to them about what happens in death?
You know, I have no fear of death whatsoever. The emotional tie to the people that are in my lives, obviously, that's a sadness.
Yeah.
When I was on the other side, I was at complete peace, no pain. The beauty and love was just overwhelming. It was so incredible. Whoever is leaving this plane is in a beautiful place. And I don't believe in a hell and a heaven, because I sure as hell would have gone to hell. So they take me up there. That was so incredible. All the crazy stuff I did in my life. Holy cows. But I think that, you know, missing somebody is one thing. And I think that everybody can communicate with people on the other side if they could simply quiet themselves enough to listen. I think they're all around you. And I'm with people all the time where I say, do you know that there's somebody on your right side and they look like this? And they say, my grandmother? And I don't know who it is, but here's who it is.
Right.
So they're all around you all the time. So if you could be still enough and go inside your own heart enough and stop all the mind chatter, all the negative stuff around you, you'll be with them again, because they want to be with you forever. So that is it. And I did wanted to tell you one more thing, which was when I came back that second time and I startled and I was awake, my mind was so fluid at that point. I had vivid memory of everything that had happened. But the only thing that I could say out loud was the words, "To thine own self be true."
Oh, that's right.
And so the reason those words were there was because when you leave this plane, it's only between you and whoever your maker is, whoever you believe that may be, or whether it's the archangels or Melchizedek or some other master or God. It's only between you and them. So everything else around you, all the negativity, all of the people with attitudes, all of the things that have happened to you, they don't matter anymore. It's just a matter of, at that time, you being face to face with your own consciousness at that point.
So do you think there's any judgment, or it seems to me that it all just goes and it's all just love and we are eternal, and that is just, we are here momentarily to try a physical experience, and then we can leave it and leave everything. And I don't even know if there's such a thing as karma. I mean, seriously, the more I study and the more I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of convinced you just let it all go. And from my experience too, it's like, it's just so beautiful. Why would you ever want to leave? And then it's like, oh, because I heard somebody say yesterday, it's like, maybe God gets tired of being God all the time. Maybe an eternal being gets tired of being eternal all the time and wants to try something new. And so it's kind of like that.
Why did you try this? Wow. Well, I think that's probably accurate. And I also think that many that are up there want to do good, and
Yeah.
they want to help those that are down here
Yes.
and try to better what's going on. And, there's also some that came down for whatever reason to do negative things. And I'm not here to judge them or to try to defeat them. I'm here to live my own reality. And if I can hold my space and be in peace and just find that place inside myself where there's that love reality. And I got to tell you, I don't love everybody. And there's a lot of people, when they come up next to me, I have to leave. But I can also tell you, I speak on a lot of programs around the world. And a lot of it's technical stuff, business kind of things, or something related to like COVID-19 right now.
Mm-hmm.
Our field that I'm in are experts in cleanup. And so a lot of times when I walk into rooms, I set the intention and the energy of the room before I go on stage. And some people that walk in can't stay. They have to leave, which I'm very happy about. But the rest of them, I'm drawing them in.
Yeah.
That's my intention.
When you say they can't stay, you're saying like maybe they're uncomfortable with that energy.
Yeah.
It's too positive
Goes
for them or
against
whatever
everything
it
they
is.
believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's awesome. We all have to play.
Oh, yes, we do. It's
Yeah,
fun.
the healing work is a lot of fun, and I will definitely continue to do it. I like doing it face-to-face, touch.
Mhm.
I've done many over the phone, but that's not fun for me. And I don't make a living doing this. I do it as a service more than anything else. I didn't used to charge anything for it, and I stopped doing that because people put no value on it sometimes when you don't charge. It's very
Yeah.
strange.
Right.
And so I will charge for it, and many times I'll take the funds that I make and I donate them. So it's a fair exchange, and I get to exchange it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my cat's joined me now. Okay. So I'm so glad, we should probably wrap this up. I'm so glad you were able to come on and share your stories, and we'll get this posted up on Facebook in the group, and I'll send you a copy of it as well.
We should do this again sometime, and I'll tell you some other crazy stories of seeing and being in these places, energy centers, where things happen you just can't even believe. It's
Yeah, I would love to. I know when we were actually about halfway through, I was like, I have to get back on, man. I have to get, because there's so much to talk about. I mean, there really is. And just to experience it and to describe it. I know you've been traveling all over the world too with, when you went with Johnette and so I even just, all the different, there's so many cool things that we can discuss and talk about and share with other people to empower them as well. So
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's really a great blessing to share with you and your audience, and always great to be with you. Thank you.
Yeah, very nice to see you. And we have to get together in person soon, huh?
I'm ready to escape. That is for sure.
Me too. I am. Yep. All right. Thanks so much, Larry. All right.
Bye-bye. Many blessings.
Bye-bye.